see you all tonight. We're here to launch From Strategy to Action, the guide to getting shit done in the public sector by Alicia and McKay. And tonight we have with us Callum Valentine, Nick Leggett, and of course the hero, Alicia McKay. First up, please welcome Callum Valentine to the mic.
Good evening, everyone. You don't expect personality to leap off the pages of a public sector strategy book. Alicia's does. It's not just because I'm biased either, although I am proudly one of her closest friends. I want to use this time to illustrate for you a little bit more about this complex maniac who has triumphantly weaponized getting shit done as a disruptive, challenging, personal and moral philosophy to the great benefit of our nation's public sector.
As a quick history lesson, our bond first formed as we spent our mutually headstrong, frankly downright annoying early 20s regularly visiting each other for debates, which inevitably alienated our then partners and, on one side, children. These visits always ended up in wine-soaked, almost shouting matches, which we both enjoyed far more than we ought to. Over time, our politics converged, but the discussions of personal and the political continue. There's nothing either of us like more than a good sparring match. My preferred tactic is an overworked analogy, followed by viciously quoting her own words back at her. An increasingly devastating technique, I'm only just realising now, to use on a published author. In fact, I'm looking forward to the moment I triumphantly pull out a reference copy and say turn to page 11. For her part, a grit and determination to bear a grudge proved itself recently. We caught up for a wine not long ago, and I was frozen, bruschetta half raised to my mouth, because I just processed the following sentence. You know, the worst thing you've ever said to me was about 10 years ago. So here we are. Here she is in 2019, boardroom ready, putting pub philosophy into action with a growing empire, name recognition, and now her first book. While Alicia and I have enjoyed a deepening friendship for a number of years now, I can also read this book from the perspective it's intended to be read, by a public servant of noble intentions, quickly mired in frustration with the glacial pace of change. A public servant hamstrung by the wholesale importation of the logic and language of private business, a language and logic often twisted beyond practical use within the unique constraints of government. The public sector, and I'm quoting here, the public sector does not have customers in its truest sense. If government services were commercially viable, government agencies would face market competition, and citizens would have a choice about whether to purchase them. That's from page 11. I recently handed a copy of this book to my manager in the customer engagement unit of a public sector department. Essentially, From Strategy to Action is a useful, thoroughly readable guide to what you're doing wrong and how to go about thinking about it and then, crucially, doing it better. It's handy having a born strategist as a best mate. I've had the same level of challenge, rigour and analysis applied to my love life over the years as many departmental strategic plans. Strategy to action indeed. In our friendship, we've worked together to develop frameworks that explain everything we come up against. A recent innovation has been Alicia's ability to whiteboard literally anything. On a flight back from Melbourne recently, we mapped out in some detail the complex and moral philosophical implications of mistaking the in-toilet call bell for the flush button, with far more serious thought than it deserved. Also invented on that flight was a way to track Alicia's involvement levels across an evening. Dubbed the spectrum of engagement, Bogan edition, the first stop is increasing facial animation, followed by wild hand gestures, banging the table, basically dancing, and the last stop before bedtime, a drink and wildly flailing hands. In the spirit of scientific inquiry, I urge you to map her impending speech along those lines, preferably on a napkin handed to me to collate and chart. So it's a good book by a complex, brave and talented person, and you should buy a copy. Alicia, I'm so proud of you and all you've achieved. I look forward to book 2.
Oh, thank you so much. This is great. You might think to go to me.
as the word is passed on to Nick Leggett.
Kia ora koutou. I usually like a microphone for a bit of protection. But look, I'm very pleased to talk tonight because I think it's really important that Alicia is recognised for the leader that she is, or who she is. This publication, I think, has the ability to not only change people's professional lives and their working environments, but actually their personal lives as well, because this is a map for life. This is a strategy for life. And it seems the message, strategy to action, is so glaringly obvious. But what struck me is how few people actually relate the two. And of course, it's true in the public sector, but it's true in the private sector as well. And it's true in our lives. Most of our daily actions at work and at home are about activity. And the activity sadly becomes the end for many of us, rather than the means to a destination. And I think that's what Alicia's book points out. This is the case, I think, because bureaucracies often start measuring activity. They measure the outputs, not the outcomes. And if you know Alicia, it's all about outcomes. It's all about outcomes. And then we move to the point that actually most strategy is crap. Most of us struggle with thinking about, well, why are we doing something, and really clearly articulating it. And that's where Alicia is so helpful, because there is, it's very clear. It's not with her. It's not about getting hung up in technicalities. It's about clarity, so you can be focused. I was impressed with Alicia when I first met her. Her clear-sighted intent. I didn't meet her as a client, by the way. I've become a client. We were both refugees from local government, so we had something in common, and we also had good discussions and the odd debate. But I have had the good fortune to use Alicia's services recently, and I watched her get a group of old blokes, bind them on the need for some strategic thinking, and then really press them on their priorities and the kind of outcomes they wanted. It's quite hard if you've got a group of people who are thinking a certain way, have always done things in the same way, but she kept them focused through clarity, awareness and alignment. And those are all key words that you'll find in her book. As I said, Alicia is now a key leader in this space. We need to recognise that. We need to listen to her. She gets things done and she cuts through the rubbish. And I'd like to say this as well. I mentioned that this is a book for life as well as for work. She lives what she preaches. Look at how she's built this business, but look at how she's trained for a marathon. She did it by having a strategy and an intent, and then using her daily activities to build to that. So I like people who actually, do what they say. I'm not one of them. So it's great when you meet one who is. So I would say that if you want to, you'll often spot people out there who have this trouble in their organisations. They don't know where they're going, they don't know why they're going there, they're not focused. It's worth a discussion with Alicia, and this wasn't meant to be a plug, but I say I only talk about this stuff when I believe it and when I've seen it work. And you've helped our organisation, you've helped our industry, so I am very happy to thoroughly recommend your services and the book. Kia ora. Now, I might just better mic myself up.
Welcome, Alicia McKay.
Oh, it's my turn. So if I'm going to skip straight to the end of Callum's spectrum. Okay, so there are a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, so thank you all for turning out to support me tonight. I really appreciate that. But there's also a bunch of people whose faces I don't know, which is quite encouraging, actually. It must mean that you perhaps picked up a copy of my book, or were at least interested in doing so. So thank you so much. Look, thank you so much all for coming along tonight. Thank you to Callum for quite a stunning introduction, and to Nick for all of your kind words. I really appreciate those. And thank you to all of you for your support. to be standing in Wellington in a bookshop talking about a book that I wrote, it seems a little bit surreal, to be honest. It's a bit of a childhood dream for me to be an author, and I'm pretty sure 2 out of 3 of my children who are here tonight share a similar dream, so it's quite exciting actually to be able to stand up in front of them and show them you can just kind of do stuff like this. So that's really nice. I don't know how many of you are familiar with my professional background, and I don't want to give you the full anthology because I recognise that there are people to whom a policy and strategy career is not their idea of an exciting story, but I'll do it anyway. Just the condensed version. I went to uni in Christchurch and I did political science, which means that I am a scientist, which is great. But I did study politics for about 5 years, and I'm not telling you this to brag, I'm telling you this because I then entered the public sector as a baby policy analyst 5 years later and didn't have a bloody clue what my job was or how the political system worked. So the point that I make there, and I don't think I'm alone in feeling like that either as a graduate or a new entrant to the public sector, is that most of us are woefully underprepared for the complexities and the unique characteristics of what it's actually like to work in government. We're not told what it's going to be like to face scrutiny from the media or from the community. We're not told what the impact of the political environment and indeed, sorry Nick, our politicians are going to have on our lives on a day-to-day basis. And I've read a lot of articles and cartoons about the bureaucracy, but oh my God, until you're in it, you wouldn't believe the level of bureaucracy that you face. And so becoming effective in that environment, unfortunately, is something that is seen as intuitive, but it just isn't, which is kind of one of the key drivers for why I thought I might write a book about this stuff. But look, I left the public sector not entirely because I was frustrated at the pace at which my work was moving. It wasn't entirely unrelated to that either. And it wasn't never clear to me how slow we could be than when I spent some time working in a law firm, worried about billing in 6-minute increments, which gets the wheels spinning, time is money wise, and was a real eye-opener for me that when you strip away a lot of the things that make it really difficult to work in government, it is possible for things to move at a slightly different pace. So I didn't last long trying to make lawyers rich because it didn't just sit that well with me. So I left that environment, but I left that environment and I returned to the public sector in a consulting capacity. And what's fascinating about that is as soon as you step out of the fold a little bit and you don't have the paper watching your every move and you don't have to fill in the same forms and worry about the same crap, you can start moving quite quickly again. Which was interesting to me and said to me, okay, so it's possible actually to leverage this environment and to deliver really good outcomes, but we're just making it unnecessarily difficult. So what can we do a little bit differently? So I spent a couple of years doing kind of policy and strategic planning type stuff. And then I went and did some accreditation in the business case kind of space. So that's saying, oh, you want to build a big thing or spend a whole lot of money on technology. What are your best options? How are you going to get value for money? What was interesting about that process was that it showed me that when you're working with senior leaders and with decision makers, it is possible to be really strategic about thinking about what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to deliver value and how to get there, which was kind of a beacon of hope that said to me, well, if we can do this here, we only worry about it when we're spending big chunks of money that are going to end up on the front page of the paper. But if we can do that here, we can apply those principles elsewhere. And so I've spent the last couple of years, well, basically just flying around talking shit in workshops actually, but I've spent the last couple of years doing exactly that, working with senior leaders and decision makers to apply that same thinking around what the big picture looks like, how it all fits together, what our real options are and how we should choose to proceed, and doing that on a really consistent basis. And I love it. It's so much fun. So as part of that journey that I've been on over the last kind of 5 years since I decided to just kind of give up my job on a whim and see if I could start a business, there's been a couple of things that have really struck me about working in the public sector, and those couple of things are the things that inspired me to write my book. And so the first thing is that, as I alluded to before, we are woefully underprepared as managers and leaders in the public sector for the complexity of managing in government. So whether you enter your post as a technical expert or a people manager, whether you've come from the private sector or you're just a public servant at any level, it's just kind of assumed that you're going to be able to manage that layer of crazy and that you understand how to operate within the bureaucratic framework, that you understand the implications of the transparency of the media and the community and your stakeholders, that you'll somehow figure out how to work around all of that without anybody telling you how, and be really strategic and make good choices. And I've been a working parent since I started working, and one of the cliches I hear bandied around about working mothers is that you're expected to go to work and work your job as though you don't have kids, and then you're expected to go home and parent your children as though you don't have a job. Has anyone heard that? I think it's kind of similar in the public sector, where we're expected to deliver results and be really effective, as if we didn't have a community mandate, but then we're also expected to deliver community outcomes and make a difference to society as though we didn't have a financial imperative. And so those two things, those competing forces, can make it extremely challenging when all you want to do is just do some good work. And so that's the second thing that I noticed in my journey that underpinned my desire to write a book about it. And that was just that I work with some really bloody good people right across the public sector. So all the time, I talk to and work with really committed, really persistent, really idealistic, passionate public managers. And I kind of recognise that I might have a disproportionate sample, because the people who call me for help and say, we need to make more strategic decisions, are probably not the people sitting on their hands not getting anything done. But I don't think that's it. I think that at every level of government in New Zealand, there are some incredible people really dedicated to doing a great job. And local government is my professional home, and it's a place that I hope I can continue to work, even as things progress, because you work with people that have real skin in the game. They're really connected to the communities that they're serving. You know, they've got the best of intentions. And I see that same dedication and that same commitment in DHBs and universities and central government agencies. I see it across the third sector. Anywhere we've got that community-facing orientation, I see that same commitment. And those people want to do a good job, but it's really hard to do that because it's really complicated. So there's a statistic in the book where there was some research done in the UK that demonstrates that your average central government agency is 30% more complex to work inside than the world's largest companies, which is astonishing. Like, it is hard. And so I wrote the book as a bit of a guiding light, not just for the people that are battling that complexity and would like some handy tips for how to get some more shit done, and I did write it for them, but I also wrote it for people that work with, for or alongside government and could do with understanding a little bit more clearly about the kind of challenges that government is facing. So that's useful when you're trying to influence the kind of decisions that you would like to make, obviously, but also to build really strong working relationships. And so I think it's useful from that standpoint, not just for those of you working in government, but for those of you that have anything to do with government, which is a whole bunch here, I reckon. So the title of my book caused a little bit of a stir when I put it out. There is a word on there that I know makes a few of you uncomfortable. Strategy. Strategy gets a really bad rap. And look, I'm anti-buzzword. I don't like jargon, but I do work in government, so sometimes I have to use it. So I just cut the jargon with swear words occasionally, so it sounds more like plain English, even though it's just jargon with swear words in it. But I think strategy gets a really bad rap. It's one of those things that we go, oh yeah, everybody can write a strategy and put it on a poster. And I mean, you're not wrong. But actually, I think that in the environment that we're operating within now, and the economy that we're operating within, and the business environment that we're operating within, things are becoming more connected than ever before. More connected and more complicated. And so if you don't have the ability to look at the big picture and to have an approach when you're making decisions and spending people's money about how all of those things fit together and what your role in that is and where you can most add value, I think you're at a huge disadvantage, whether you work for government or anywhere else. So I think strategy is really important, which is why I put it on the cover. And then I put a swear word in there as well to cut the jargon and also as kind of a client filter. So if you see my book and you see the subline, and that doesn't appeal to you, like we're probably not going to work well together. So it just kind of makes it easier for everyone so we don't have to have the awkward coffee. Yeah, like I'm not going to talk about strategy or about my work for much longer because I recognise that that's dry as toast for about half of you who've turned up to support me. And that's kind of where I want to go with this next, which is just to say that, I wrote a book. I wrote it over the summer. But I'm being a little bit facetious when I say that because I suppose I did have a few of the bits and pieces ready to pop in. But look, I did write my book over the summer, and I couldn't have done that without the incredible support and encouragement of a whole lot of people who are really active in my life. So I'd like to thank Christine and Rachel from Your Books. Where have you gone? You're hiding? For putting up with my shit and buying into my impossible deadline and making it happen. Thank you so much for that. I know I wasn't your favourite person for a while there. My friends, my clients, my colleagues, I'd like to thank you all for letting me test out material on you and talk about things that maybe you weren't as excited about as I was. Particularly to my clients who continue to hire me, which provides case studies that I can put in my books. That's great. But most of all, I would like to thank my family. Hamish, Bailey, Charlotte and Harriet are all here tonight. And I deeply, deeply appreciate all of the support and encouragement that I've had, not just over the last 6 months when I decided to write a book and run around with it, but over the last few years when I decided to kick off on this crazy journey. And I've had you all behind me. I wasn't always at my best after late night writing sessions. I've been grumpy and distracted, and I really appreciate your tolerance and support of that. When I finished the first draft of my manuscript, I came out of my office and on the kitchen counter was a cake that the girls in Hamish had baked me, and the cover of my book was the icing on the cake. So it doesn't get a lot better than that. And I'll just wrap it up on a soppy note and just say thank you all so much for coming along and for your support. I'm sure you've all bought books. So I think the next step from here is that I pose for photos and sign and have engaging conversations with you all. Thanks very much.
What are you looking forward to about this book?
So as someone who's a manager in government, we often fight through a lot of bureaucracy to try and get anything done. It feels like we're chasing our tail. Strategy seems to be the thing we'll do once we've delivered something else. So I'm hoping we can flip that on its head, get a plan and go from there.
What's the biggest hurdle for you in the public sector?
Biggest hurdle in public sector is probably the drive between getting funding to do something, and then when you've got it, that trade-off of trying to do what's best for the public versus what widget or outcome you need to deliver quickly, which you will often lose sight of the actual outcome you're trying to deliver.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I'm looking forward to sitting down and having a good read and taking away some tips that will hopefully improve my work and my personal life.
Do you like the title?
Love the title. You've got to get shit done.
Well, I'm a public sector manager, and the title captured my imagination. I guess getting shit done is in the public sector is harder than you might think. So the opportunity to learn a few shortcuts or tricks about how to do that was quite appealing.
So how did you hear about the launch tonight in the book?
I saw it on Facebook. And possibly also on LinkedIn, and both were enough triggers to make me come along.
And how long have you worked in the public sector?
41 years. Yeah.
So what interested you in Alicia's book?
Well, I've known Alicia for a little while, and it was really interesting to hear her talk about her book and where it kind of came from. So I didn't know that about her, that she had such a background working in the public sector, so it was really interesting to hear that. And she's really engaging and thoughtful, so I imagine, I haven't read her book yet, but I imagine it's going to be great.
What does good strategy mean to you?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? So I've been in the public sector for 20 years and have worked quite a bit in the strategy space, but my background's in HR, so I kind of work on that with the strategy people and what comes up after that. So to me, strategy sometimes can be really in depth, lots of people thinking about things and not actually doing anything with it. So that's why I think this concept of strategy to action is so important. So I think Alicia's really hit the nail on the head with people don't understand about actually how you take action from strategy. So the question about what does strategy mean to me, it means something a bit boring and people don't connect with it and they just put it in their bottom drawer.
Do you think the public sector knows the difference between strategy and tactics?
Oh, I don't think so, no. I think it's quite mixed up, isn't it, about what's strategy and what's tactics. So, I think the answer is no, they don't.
It's more natural.
So what interested you in the book?
Well, I first heard Alicia speak at the Getting Shit Done Club. Coming back to Wellington, having been away in Nelson looking after my family and elder folk, I'm coming back into Wellington and public sector where I've been for a while. So I was looking for events to connect with people, and Alicia brought so much energy and positivity about how it could happen well that I'm still following her. So I've signed up to all her other things, so I thought I'd come along and support her tonight with her book launch.
Great. And what does sort of strategy mean to you in terms of the public sector?
It means being really clear about where you're going and why, so that you can have those multiple conversations. As Alicia said in her speech tonight, you've got the financial pressure and imperative, and you've got the community wants, so you're in many, many conversations. If you can keep repeating why you're doing something, then people, Kiwis, who I know best, say, yeah, fair enough. You've got to know why you're doing something and where you're going. That's strategy.
What do you think of the title?
Good title, a bit dry, but it's aimed at particular people that want action. That's our big thing. We still want to be active, and I think that's one of the big pressures on public sector managers is just do something now. So I think it's really pragmatic to have the two together, because that is the rub. You know, you're meant to be active, but you need to know where you're going, and that's how you can sustain your energy in the public sector, because it is quite hard graft.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I really appreciate Alicia being a young woman and bringing her family and her whole self. So that's one thing I liked about seeing her at the Getting Shit Done Club, is this is who she is, and she's proud of it, and she should be appreciated for that.
The book really resonated with me because of my experience of working in the public sector, and I think one of the big challenges is trying to balance off controls that exist within the public sector versus getting things done. Sometimes it's quite difficult to make sure that what you're doing lines up with the outcomes that you're trying to achieve, and what Alicia was talking about, that's everything that's in this book.
What does strategy mean to you?
What does strategy mean to me? I think what strategy means to me is looking out to the horizon and thinking about where you're heading. And for me, I think what's always challenging in the public sector is keeping that in mind as you chunk it down and move through each incremental piece to get towards that outcome. So I'm really keen to see what the book might tell us about that.
What still excites you about the public sector?
I think it's the opportunity to make something really great for New Zealand as a country and New Zealand's people. What attracted me to the public sector is making a difference, and I'm really hoping that this book will help me to do that better.
Anything you'd like to add?
I'm really pleased for Alicia that she's been able to produce this book. It's been a real effort, and I'm keen to get stuck into it.